Hello, everybody. We're going to start a new lesson on the rock cycle. So we're going to talk about the entire rock cycle. Okay, now this is pretty in depth as far as details. So what I want you to do is first off, I put a slideshow together to give you some text on different parts of the rock cycle, but I also wanted to talk about it. Okay, so we're going to start off with that the rock cycle is when all kinds of different rocks can turn into other types of rocks. Okay, that's why they call it a cycle. Okay, so we're going to start off with sedimentary rock. So first off, sedimentary rock is the process of a rock being changed physically and chemically from one rock to another. Okay, so what ends up happening is that we have sedimentary rock. It weathers and it erodes. Okay, so weathering means that we can go through a chemical process or it can go through a physical process. That chemical process could be like, for instance, acid rain or some type of root that has a weak acid on it that makes a rock break down. Okay, so when it breaks down, it's going to turn it into a smaller particle. As it turns into a smaller particle, then is what's going to go through a process called erosion. So when erosion takes place, that means that it's moving from one place to the other. Now, there are a couple ways that it can move. It could first off move by moving through wind. It can move through water, and also can move through gravity. Okay, so what ends up happening is that it weathers, it then erodes, and then what ends up happening is it settles somewhere. Okay, this is called deposition. And as it's depositing in this area, it builds up over a long period of time. What ends up happening is we call what is called compaction. Okay, it compacts because it gets more and more layers built up on top of each other. Okay, so now then what also happens is that there's minerals inside that water. Okay, now if there's no water there, then there's not going to be much cementation. Okay, but what ends up happening is it's cemented together. That's where that word cementation comes from. Okay, so a couple things that I want to talk about is first off, erosion is moving a rock from one place to the other. Okay, we also have two different types of sedimentary rock. One's called clastic and one's called organic. Okay, now clastic is just basically another rock being moved from one place to another, and it's breaking down, but it is a sandstone or a shale. Okay, it gets broken down little pieces at a time, and then it becomes a different type of rock. Okay, now organic is different in that it used to be alive. So, for instance, if we take limestone as an example, so marine life grows, it lives, what ends up happening is that it dies, it settles to the bottom of the ocean, and as it does that, what ends up happening is that it turns into another rock through the same process of deposition, compaction, and then cementation. Okay, so this is sedimentary rock. Now, once again, all of these rocks, this igneous rock and this metamorphic rock, can turn into sedimentary rock just by being exposed to the environment. And then what ends up happening is it then weathers and erodes, then it settles, going through that same process that I went through. Okay? Now, let's talk about metamorphic rock. Okay? Metamorphic rock is the heat and pressure from above. Okay? So this has to takes place deep in the Earth's surface, way below the Earth's mountains and different plate tectonics movements. So it changes through what's called a metamorphic rock. So heat and pressure builds up, and it changes any one of these rocks. So it could change a sedimentary rock, okay, like for instance shale to slate. Okay, we can change from sedimentary rock to metamorphic rock from heat and pressure. Okay. There's not a whole lot more to talk about other than that, okay? It's a lot less complicated than what we do when we do sedimentary rock, okay? Now, metamorphic rock, sedimentary rock, and igneous rock can also turn into igneous rock. So now, this here is the process of heat, not so much pressure, heat building up. And what ends up happening is that this rock, or this rock can melt. And when it melts, it turns into either magma and then lava. So when we talk about magma is a liquid rock that's underneath the Earth's surface, deep in the Earth's surface. Okay, so as it's flowing around, it might get into a little crack in the Earth's, like let's say there's a mountain or there's an opening in the ocean's crust. What ends up happening is that it starts to move, and as it's moving, it can be cooled. Okay, so when it's cooled, it is called then lava. Okay, as soon as the rock starts to flow outside of the Earth's surface, it becomes lava. It's flowing. That's a volcano. Okay. Now, there could be volcanoes underneath the Earth's surface, the ocean surface as well, okay? So we have two different types of igneous rock. We have intrusive and we have extrusive, okay? Intrusive is a rock that basically cools really, really slowly. And as it's cooling really, really slowly, we have what's called large crystals, okay? Now, these large crystals are, for instance, like granite, okay? Granite is a rock that you might have like in your kitchen. It might be your countertop, okay? Or they use it for outside places like buildings, okay? So granite is very, very hard, okay? But it has big crystals. And then we have extrusive, which is basalt and pumice and obsidian, okay? So know those three rocks there, okay? Let's talk about basalt first. Basalt we would find on the ocean's crust, okay? So it cooled really, really fast. There's no crystals. What ends up happening is that the plates are moving underneath the ocean, and what ends up happening is that lava comes out of the plate movement, and then it cools really, really fast. That's called basalt. Now, pumice is a rock that we might find on top of the Earth's surface, okay? On Earth, not in the ocean. We would find it, it's really, really light, and it has really, really small crystals or no crystals at all. The same with obsidian. Obsidian kind of looks like glass. And so it looks very, very much like glass because there's no crystals at all, okay? So that would be called lava. It cools. When it cools, we now have a rock that is melted. That is igneous rock. Okay, now igneous rock can turn into weathering. Think about this, okay? So if there's a mountain and the mountain's being weathered from wind and rain and chemical reactions, it can then turn into a sedimentary rock. This all applies to all of these. So I think that's all I'm going to cover. This over here, if you read through that there, it gives you a description on how igneous rock is made. And then a couple notes that I want to make sure you understand. All rocks can change into other rocks. The three rock types are igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. And a cycle means that it is ever changing. Okay? All of these can change into new rocks. Okay? So that's my little description of the rock cycle. Okay? Now, I think you guys have probably gone over this before, but what I would like for you to do is just kind of take notes. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a slideshow. This is going to be inside the slideshow. And then when you do the slideshow, you'll take notes, and then we'll have another activity to go with this. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed my first lesson on the rock cycle. So we will talk later, and have a good evening.